That's so good to hear you say that, actually, David. I've been telling people that for months now, that like we are a biological computer. We function on electromagnetism. That is how all of our bodily functions take place. All of our thought processes, everything is electromagnetism. And they don't give people $700 mobile phones on a $1 plan because they like you to have expensive technology.
Exactly.
They do it because they want you to have the mobile phone so that you are in this electromagnetic soup that we're swimming around in. It's doing major, major damage. And things like Codex and the electromagnetism and what they're doing to the food, we've got a lot of people sitting around saying, look, there's going to be martial law, there's going to be revolutions, there's going to be riots, and meanwhile, they're slipping all of this in under the carpet unnoticed to people, and it is the most dangerous thing of all, I believe.
Yes, because, as you rightly say, if you can access people chemically and electrically, you are affecting them emotionally and mentally in terms of their perceptions and their thoughts, as well as physically. 2 or 3 years ago in Britain, there was a lady who was in institutions basically for 40 years for clinical depression. And if you'd have said to that person, who are you? She'd have said, I'm a clinical depressive. After 40 years, someone said to her, can you think of anything that happened around the time that this just came on? Because it came on very suddenly. And she said, the only thing I could think of, she said, is I had 19 tooth fillings with mercury. She was advised to go and get the mercury fillings taken out and go on a mercury detox program, which she did, and the clinical depression of 40 years disappeared, never to return. This was in all the national newspapers 2, 3, 4 years ago now. So if you can access people electrically and chemically, you can literally change their personality because of the way emotion manifests electrically, energetically, and chemically, and so does thought.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I've got in one of my films I showed a test they used with a cat where they put a microchip on its head and they changed the emotions of the cat simply by changing the frequency of the going through the microchip. It's amazing what they can do. So I don't know why people think that these getting yourself chipped is, they can't harm you if they put a microchip in. But they can literally control your emotions and your thoughts and everything about you by putting a microchip in you. It's like hardwiring a virus into a biological computer.
This is something that is, in the end, probably the most important thing of all, because what they want is a structure in which they have a world government which would take all the major decisions in the world for every country, a world central bank that will dictate global finance to every country, and that's what fundamentally this credit and financial crash is all about, creating the problem to justify that. And this $500 billion they've decided at the G20 summit to give to the IMF has turned the IMF into a de facto world central bank, and that's just a stepping stone, totalitarian tiptoe to the fully fledged, fully named world central bank. They want a world currency which would replace all other currencies and would only be electronic, and of course there's fundamental implications for freedom there, because if you go into a store now and you hand over electronic money, a credit card, and the computer says no, you can still pay cash. When there's no cash, the computer decides if you eat. And they want and this is the other point which we're just talking about, they want a microchipped population connected to a global computer and the positioning satellite system. And they are going to justify it by having your medical details. So if you're ever in an accident or whatever, your medical details are available immediately on the chip, and by overcoming credit card fraud by having the chip under your skin and all your financial details on that. So you'll pay with the chip as you go into a supermarket and all the rest of it. This is to connect with the electronic global currency, and also they'll justify it with the old constantly recurring justification of fighting terrorism. But the real reason, as you quite rightly point out, is to access the biological body computer and control it electrically, chemically, and therefore its thoughts and its emotional state. And also, by the way, the other in that list, they want a world army. And what they want to do is to merge the United Nations peacekeeping operation with NATO to become the world army. And I wrote in a book 15, 16 years ago, watch for the excuses being made for NATO to start operating outside the North Atlantic treaty area. And that's what they're doing, of course, now with them in Afghanistan, and they're talking about them going elsewhere. So the agenda is there to be seen, and it's there to be researched, and the evidence is there to show that that's been planned a long, long time. In fact, I was in America, as I said, a few weeks ago, and I came across this lady who told me that in 1970, she was living in Florida, and she was a customer of a branch of the Bank of America. And the bank started insisting that she put her, and I suppose other people put their thumbprint on checks when they signed them. And she was outraged, 1970, cracky, what about now? She was outraged at, this attack on civil liberties and privacy and etc. And she caused a bit of a fuss, and the bank manager called her in, and her husband. And he said, I want to explain something to you. And she said what he told her was that there was going to be an explosion of credit cards, electronic money, that there was going to be cameras in the streets all over the cities and the towns, and that they were moving towards a time when there would be an electronic tag under the skin that would have all the finance on it. This is 1970. And the point of him telling her was, he said to her, so compared with what's coming, putting your thumbprint on a check's not a very big deal, is it? And this lady said, me and my husband have been ticking off what he said was going to happen decade after decade, right up to the present day as it's unfolding. This has been planned a very, very long time, and this is why it's coming in so smoothly, if you like, so in such a coordinated way. For people who haven't come across this, how do they do that? How do they coordinate this global situation? What they've created is a secret society version of a transnational corporation. The headquarters, which dictates the policy for the whole corporation, if you like, is in Europe for historical reasons. In each country, Australia, New Zealand, America, wherever, there is a subsidiary network of this global secret society web. And that subsidiary network in the individual countries, their job is to control that country's government, the political parties who have any chance of forming governments, all of them, the media at ownership level, the corporations, and anything that is the law enforcement, the military, and all these different elements of the establishment. And their job is to control those. And each subsidiary network in each country is doing the same. So when the headquarters in Europe says, okay, this is the agenda, this is what's going to happen now, these networks then go to work in response to that, and suddenly you see the same things happening in country after country all over the world at the same time. And it's like the response to this economic crisis. It's been a pretty much unified response. I mean, you have the manufactured divisions to give the idea that it's not coordinated. Oh, well, I don't agree with that and I don't agree with that. But in the end, it happens anyway. And what the agenda of this economic crisis is one, stage one, crash the world economy. Done. Stage two, get the governments to throw cuckoo land amounts of money at the banking system overwhelmingly, not to help people out, which would be much more effective, but throw it at the banking system. And that's designed symbolically to empty the guns of all the governments in terms of having any response to this crash. Stage three, crash the economy in an even bigger way than stage one, at which point the governments are spent in terms of their ability to react. And that's when we're going to start seeing the de facto world central bank, the IMF now, being replaced by a fully fledged world central bank, and this global economic architecture that people like Gordon Brown in Britain are talking about as the response, the solution to the problem of a catastrophic global economic collapse, which is engineered from start to finish. Did not have to happen.